Yeah, in this case, yeah, absolutely. So I would say, without further ado, let's go to the meat of this
Now,
podcast. And
now I have enough
enough
preface
disclaimers,
points.
like
Let's
before we
just
do that, and buts, and we can still have some side remarks if we want to make them in general context of our tempo reconstruction or what have you, more in general and philosophical points in relation to classical music.
yes, of course. So I will now share my screen and we're gonna take a look. And for the audio listeners, of course, we're gonna listen to the two recordings that we just explained. So this is you playing the Moonlight Sonata, and we're gonna switch in between you and Lisitsa back and forth in certain segments. And we are just going to start with you and just experience what's going on for a few seconds, and I'm going to stop it whenever I think it's suitable. So let's go. So, what do we make of this recording?
It's
It's
been a long time since I listened to it, and actually, like when I started studying that, or studying, like, this is a movement you barely have to study, let's be honest, but like it's not easy to play. I I thought it was pretty slow, but when I rehear it now, it's like even I am involving in this, it's like an adagio, like sostenuto even, and I think like, oh,
mm-hmm.
this is um this is flowing, I would say. But I don't know what your reaction is.
But that's very similar to my reaction actually. So this is not slow. It doesn't feel, of course, it is slow, but it doesn't feel like it's dragging enormously. And what I think the two things you're doing here that are very interesting. And the first one is you're giving an accent on every beat. So you kind of have a beat to lean on very regularly, so that doesn't make it feel slow. And if you focus on that beat, you have like a steady thing going on. Of course, if you then focus on the, let's call it melody, then it gets a little more difficult. And that's probably where we're going to have a difference when we go to Lisitsa. So that if you look at the melody itself, but this, my first reaction is this doesn't feel slow. This feels like a very calm scenery, and it's steady. It keeps going, and then there's a little bit of melody coming in that just yeah, I cannot describe what it does, but there is something going on. That's how I see it, and it doesn't feel very slow.
Okay.
That's like the very first impression I have. And it's interesting that you say the exact same thing. And we have not spoken about this beforehand. So this is our actual reaction to this. So do we go now to Lisitsa and we listen to that?
Yeah.
So this is something entirely different.
Yeah, and I was measuring the tempo. She's playing almost in single beat. So that is exactly, almost exactly double the tempo that I'm using. So very interesting to compare. So I
Hmm.
let you speak first.
What I sense here is that she's practically she's doing the same thing that you do. So she's also emphasizing the first note of every beat because it's always like a what's that, a triplet on every beat. So she's also emphasizing that, but it the intensity compared to you is lower. And I feel more focused on the melody. So it feels like she's playing the accompaniment faster and it goes more to the background and she focuses more on the melody. But what also happens is that the tempo she's using is not steady. So
Okay, now it gets interesting. Now I'm
yeah,
listening.
she's slowing down in the melody. She's giving like the notes some time, and that's probably the biggest difference. And this kind of she's highlighting the melody more, and you were like, yeah, that's how I would describe it. So what do you make
Okay.
of that?
No, it is very interesting because, of course, the whole idea of like giving the melody everything and the accompaniment is just the accompaniment is like also something that more and more in the 19th century and even today, like it's we are super hyper focused on the melody. Where I play like from my education as a Baroque player, I play from the bass, like it's the harmony. That's carrying everything. And of course, here you have these in my case, longer melodies because
Hmm.
I play half the tempo. And let's compare, like not now, let's listen to Lisitsa a few more times and we go back to my recording that you also experience like then suddenly we will not have the same feeling anymore that it's like so fast that we will have a feeling that it's slower. But what you mentioned is like of course you could say like she is highlighting the melody and what you notice she's slowing down considerably, I would say, if you would measure that. Then we can have a discussion like, is that quote unquote allowed to do that in this music or not? Well, Beethoven is not indicating that. And in that style, just take my word for it or not for what it's worth. It's not done in that style. This kind of flowing of tempo is something that is much later, like late 19th century even. We had we made some I think some there are some podcasts that will be coming up that we have already recorded on tempo rubato and that will be very interesting for people to listen to, and we will make that point more. But the question is, of course, why is she doing that? Like, you start in a certain tempo, there are triplets, there's rhythmically nothing is changing, and then suddenly comes the melody and the tempo goes down. People would say like, yeah, but she obviously wants to highlight the entrance of the melody, which is fine. I mean, if you want to do that, and by the way, disclaimer, it's fine, whatever she does. In a way, this what we hear right now is the real authentic performance. What I'm doing is like the sort of people would say fake going back, but that's of course a tendency of like how we say that like it's something that recently humanity does. We are interested in like how was the past, how did people understand the past, how that they make buildings, how we restoring buildings in their original context, and we want to play also music as the composer. And so that's a different approach. But of course, she's just like a pawn on this line of evolution, and in that sense, she's more authentic than what we are doing because we are reconstructing something that has completely disappeared. Anyways, that's another discussion. But she's doing that because you have now a dotted eighth note with 16th notes. And in order in this tempo to give that like a little bit meaningful, you have to give that 16th note more emphasis. And she's doing that. It shows that she is a musician. She feels like they cannot just play in tempo because then it sounds like dum, da dum. It's like, what? There is not this sensitivity. That's maybe not a word. It's like this like vulnerability. This is like something that is on the point of breaking this melody. And then she feels like if I punch this 16th note in that tempo that I'm playing at, that I chose at the beginning, it's not working because then it penetrates this whole feeling that I want to project. And therefore she's doing that. I mean, Steinway can just play that 16th repeated note with no problems. And that's the reason. And each and every time you have this figure, dum, da, da, she will slow down. It's not
Mm.
indicated in the score. But of course, now we're going to technically like judge in a way, if you wish, like put her recording next to performance practice rules in that time. Then I can say like there's not indicated any ritenuto in that score. Also from the tradition, whatever the descriptions, at that point, the melody just comes and just fits in the movement that the accompaniment said. There is nothing that you can say like that justifies, quote unquote, again, because again, you do whatever you want. But from the performance practice of that time, that justifies this highlighting, slowing down feature. I mean, even if you don't know that, Beethoven is setting up like 4 bars or something like that, an accompaniment with a specific movement. Why would he want you when the melody comes to ruin the feeling that he wants to have with the listener? He's preparing the listener for this eternal, ongoing triplet figure, and then suddenly, as a listener, you're going to be like awakening from your dream, so to say, by pulling that tempo down. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
No, it definitely does. And I think if I could come up with a hypothesis of why she does it, it's because if she plays it a tempo, as it would be, you could say, written in the score, very strictly speaking, the character of the piece would be lost. It would become like a jolly piece that you would like dum 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 dum, something like this. This is like
Not
completely
that fast, but then you
not
get your
not that fast, but exaggerating, of course. But it would change the character of the piece, and of course, she wants
exactly.
to preserve that, and that's I think where it comes in, right?
That's 100% accurate. And so what everybody is doing that, by the way. So if you
Mm.
listen to any recording, we are so used to this, like slowing down at that particular point that we don't even notice that. It makes maybe sense, Stefan, to play it again so that
Hmm.
the listeners or the viewers, if you watch the podcast, can actually experience this specific, like changing, altering of the rhythm of the piece.
Yeah. So, and what we're also going to do is we're going to go now in the reverse order. So we're going to start fast and go slow, so that the listeners will also experience like what is the change if you go from fast to slow, and that's the
Yeah.
the spice analogy you had. So let's start again with Lisica.
Maybe go from the beginning. Go from the beginning.
Go from the beginning. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, just the same excerpt that you hear the entrance of the melody, just
Okay.
what we've been talking about. Okay, just pause the music a little bit here. So you hear that after the 16th note, the left hand stops. Did you notice that?
Hmm.
Go
Yeah.
a
And
few seconds back and let play it again. And that is if you know that, and that's like it sounds a little bit like annoying when I keep making these points, but once you know that, you cannot listen to that anymore because why is a triplet suddenly waiting for the right hand to be finished? I mean, a triplet is supposed to not stop at the end of the bar. Just play it again.
hmm
You hear that?
hmm yeah, that's
And just go and find a recording on YouTube. You'll find that if you want to listen to that more and more. And now again, you can listen if you listen to this performance like a zillion times or these kinds of performance, you get used to that.
yeah.
We anticipate on that. But when you know that it's not supposed to, the left hand is just stopping. He gives all the room to the right hand because the right hand says, hey, I need more time because
Hmm.
otherwise I'm out of character. It's actually what's happening. And she's responding very well to that because, of course, she's a great musician. And she doesn't play over it. I mean, I can guarantee you, I may be saying something now that people will clip and just have as a short on some YouTube channels that hate me. Like in hip musicians will do the opposite. They will demonstrate as a single beat, even to prove my point wrong, and go over it. And then
Hmm.
suddenly you have a piece, and then they will say, like, yeah, but that was how it's supposed to play. If you don't like it, too bad. But I mean, there is some room for discussion there, I would say. But anyways, here you have clearly that she is slowing down there, and it's hard to measure, Stefan. But
Hmm.
because it's just a short passage. But I'm super convinced that when you would be able to measure the tempo that she really has and the particular place where the dotted note is, that it would be my tempo.
Hmm. Yeah, I
And
mean
then,
that's of course a guesstimation now, but it's a
yeah,
significantly slower speed at
yeah.
these segments. Yes.
And that is very important because these compromises, they point to a wrongly chosen beginning tempo. And I'm not saying wrong here in the sense of like you cannot like it. Again, I make this disclaimer all over it because people are sensitive to this. And I understand that because the music really resonates to you and the way the music is played, we as performers have the enormous duty and like responsibility to bring that music to our audiences. And what we are doing is actually saying like this is what you're supposed to listen to and like. And people like that after generations of playing it like that. And so I'm very sensitive. I know that people can react very emotional when I say this is actually quote unquote wrong. But when you have to compromise in the score at the beginning of the piece so heavily in order to save the character, then you can safely say that your beginning tempo is wrong. Maybe what I should, unless you want to do something else, maybe play a few bars, like 10, 15 seconds of her recording, and then we go to my recording and then see what the difference is. And then we can also, and for the listeners, just um, just sit back, listen, and see what happens. What is your first reaction when we go from this recording back to my recording?
Hmm. Let's do that. I'll just start from the beginning again.
Yeah, why not?
This now feels very slow.
Yeah, and if I'm very critical to myself, I shouldn't wait. I waited a little bit at the triplets as well, and it was not necessary. Alberto will definitely not do that. He's playing way more in an orchestral way, like just as ongoing. And it is also like, of course, I'm affected by the recordings as well, but it's subtle here. But what is your
Yeah.
feeling? What do you
Yeah,
feel when you go back to this?
it's exactly what we said. It's when we started listening to this and then we went over, then this didn't feel actually very slow. If we now come from the fast recording and we go to this, it feels slower, but I feel like in this case, your head adjusts quite quickly because you have more emphasis on these regular beats, and that's, I think, actually quite helpful for the listener. And of course, you're not really slowing down. I noticed it also a little bit in segments that you're slowing down like a tiny bit, but the melody is steady and you just keep going. And yeah, I feel like it feels difficult to stop this because your head kind of adjusts to the speed and you just Yeah, you just acclimatize after a few seconds, and then you can just keep going listening to that, if you
Okay.
get my
And
point.
yeah. So, and it's also a way of evolving playing like this 4 years ago recorded. Like I wouldn't like it's a microscopic small emphasis that I give on the repeated note. I wouldn't do that anymore today. But anyways, that's of course why we are re-recording everything. Alberto's doing that. But anyways, um, what is if I ask you what is if you would have to describe the character of both performances, would you be able to do that in a sense of, and then from the perspective of like, and no, let's not give a perspective because that would maybe be a biased position.
What do you mean by perspective?
Well, I'm not going to say it because then you
Or what
are
I enjoy
influenced.
more, or
No, no, no. It's just like, it, like, well, the tempo dictates everything.
hmm
It's what people know. I mean, it's not something that invented. Like changing the tempo changes everything.
yeah.
You should make t-shirts with that. Because it's true. It's for every musician true. That's the reason why people act so emotionally to our research because yeah, we are not changing the tempo by a little bit, but we're changing the tempo by a lot. So the music changes a lot. But what is changing? And of course, for a performer, the articulation, phrasing, accentuation, everything, the language changes completely. That's also a thing that makes whole beat so difficult because musicians that do try they say often like it doesn't work. Yeah, you have to try harder and you have to try longer and you have to stop thinking if the whole beat is correct or not and just like for a few months or a few weeks even just imagine that whole beat was true and that what would happen. But anyways, but music changes the character. The outcome as a totality is of course changed. And you have now two performances in two different tempos. This is a world of difference.
hmm
You cannot even compare the character of the piece in the way Lisitsa plays to the way that I'm playing it. And it shows the point. And therefore, it's like a biased question because it leads to like which one do you like more? I mean, let's not go into that path. Let's you can share that if you want, but it shows how important it is to reconstruct these tempos. And at least if you want to hear a little bit of the spirit that Beethoven had in mind. If you like this podcast and you want to listen to the full episode, go over to Substack. There's a link in the description box. Subscribe to Substack because then you have the full audio version of this podcast. If you want to have the video version, there's also a possibility on Substack to subscribe for $5 per month. Or you can have also the video podcast and support the entire project on our Patreon site. Links to all of these platforms below. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. We see each other very soon again. Bye.